week 3 in our Evening of the Arts process. So we have our general topic. We have now fully crafted our purpose statement. We've used our research to hone in what exactly we are going to be researching. I don't want you to research something that you can easily Google and find the answer to, so hopefully that research has weeded out some of those purpose questions and you've now come up with one on your own. This week, you are going to hypothesize the answer to your own question. Now you've done enough research to have some legitimate background in your because of your hypothesis. And a reminder how to write a hypothesis. There's 3 parts. There's an if, a then, and a because. If goldfish survive better with a different temperature of water, then I believe 20-degree temperature is the most ideal because most goldfish live in room temperature water, like the one on my counter. That would be an if, then, and a because statement. All are required in your hypothesis. The second thing that you're going to come up with. So this week there's 3 parts. The first is hypothesis. The second are materials. This is when you're going to start listing out everything you're going to need to make your experiment happen. You don't need to gather all these materials yet, but you need to list them out. Everything that you're going to need to conduct it, everything you're going to need to measure or collect data. So if you're going to need a thermometer to test the temperatures, then you need to have that on your list, as well as probably 3 different glass bowls for each different temperature, a heat source, a cold source, 9 different goldfish, probably 3 different thermometers, unless you're going to let it rotate through and you're going to check those, which is great too. So the materials is pretty simple, and that can be added to, especially after you write your procedure and you and I talk through that in a class setting. The third is the procedure. Now this is where we get, it takes a lot of work to write an amazing procedure, and we're going to go over that in class, but I also want to go over that here with, let me grab it. Here we go. All the parts to the scientific method. Now this handout is in your packet and goes over every detailed step of the procedure, but I do want to clarify what some of those are now so that you can go back and use it as a reference. Now, your procedure should be logical, which means someone could actually follow the steps that you're writing. They should be numbered. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. The rationale for numbering your steps is you could tell someone to return to step 3 and do something different as they follow through the rest of the steps. It really saves you so much time and effort by numbering them to use as reference later. Okay, so now it's logical. It's a numerical value. You are going to put into your procedure controlled variables, things that make sure your experiment stays fair, so that not one side has a benefit of the other. So if we're sticking with our goldfish idea of different temperatures, you can't feed your cold goldfish more food. That's not fair. So then their diet has to remain the same. And if you're only checking temperature, you have to keep their light source similar. Otherwise, you're also checking the cold temperature. If you keep it in your fridge, it's dark. That's not fair. The other goldfish that's at room temperature is getting amazing sunlight. So now you have another variable. That's not fair. So your controlled variables, you don't write controlled variables and then list them out. But in your steps, you integrate them into what you're telling the person to do who's going to be copying your steps. Okay? Next thing is the manipulated variable. This is what you're changing. So in this experiment, you'd be changing the temperature of the water. And the responding variable, which is our next, is what you're measuring. Now, are you measuring the lifespan of your goldfish? Do you have multiple goldfish? Are you measuring their reproduction? Are you measuring their activity level, how much they swim, or how much they eat, or how much they poop? What is it that you're measuring, and how are you measuring it? That's your responding variable. Your experimental control is going to be the basic, the baseline, whatever the other ones are being compared to. So in our goldfish experiment, the experimental control would be our room temperature goldfish that's been sitting on the counter, that always sits on the counter, and we're going to compare it to our fridge counterpart and my stovetop counterpart that's going to be heated up and cooled down. Our extra validity measure. Now this one can be a harder one to understand depending on the kind of experiment that it is. But what an extra validity measure does is it ensures that every time you're measuring it, it's a fair measurement. So with our goldfish example, if I have a thermometer and I just tested my stovetop, and then I put it right into my fridge one, and I dipped it into my fridge, and I pulled it out, and I read that it says it's 35 degrees. What I didn't do is allow my thermometer to cool down all the way. So an extra validity measure would include leaving a thermometer in there until it stopped moving or for a set amount of time. An extra validity measure could also include the cleaning of a thermometer or the dusting off of a ramp if you're going to put something down a ramp, making sure it was clean every time, or cleaning out the fish bowls with the same cleaning detergent before you ever started and having the same cleaning process for the entire experiment. That can be a validity measure, sorry. Two other things. The next one is that there needs to be repeated trials to tell your reader or the audience that you're doing this multiple times. As I say in class, I don't want any half-court shot data. Somebody can make a half-court shot one time, but if they can make it 3 times in a row, that's telling you something about their ability. So all of our research, we want to prove that it's valid by doing it at least 3 times. And then after you've told them to do it 3 times, you're going to want to make sure that you tell them to record the data that they found. Record the amount of ammonia level in your goldfish tank or the amount of motion. Record that in your journal, telling them to record that information. So the procedure has a lot of steps, and that has to be cleared by me before you start your experiment, because I don't want you to start it and not have something in place that's going to ruin your results for the rest of the time, therefore making the rest of your experiment nearly impossible to do well. So if there are things that you need to change with your procedure after giving it to me in class, you have to have those done, have me sign off on it, and then you can start your experiment.